A list of the areas we do our research. Open education, social computing, mobile and ubiquitous computing, and that's the area that I'm leading. Semantic technologies, adaptivity and personalization, learning and knowledge analytics, which is a new area of research. So those are our focus of research. So if anyone is interested in those areas, any one of those, let me know, maybe we can do collaboration. And here's some of my professional activities. I was the president of the International Training Federation, which is a federation of 500,000 members around the world. So it was a very busy year and a half for me. One of the founding directors of the International Association of Mobile Learning, and we sponsor the international conference once a year. It was in Helsinki last year, or this year. Next year it'll be someplace in Europe, maybe Cyprus, we haven't decided. I was on the board of the Canadian Society for Training and Development. Also, I was part of a committee that sets standards for mobile learning. So there are actually standards for mobile learning that you can follow when you design your mobile materials, so you can share with your colleagues. Edited 4 books, and I'm editing 3 books at the moment. I'm quite busy. And some people from your universities actually read the chapters for those books, yes. And I was an invited guest at the World Summit Innovation in Education WISE in Doha, Qatar in 2010. So those are some of the things that I do in my spare time. So this is the committee that sets standards for mobile learning. We had 4 countries. I represented Canada, someone from South Korea, Germany, and Luxembourg. So we have standards for mobile learning that you can actually follow. Some of the recent global activities, lots of interest for mobile learning in the world. I get invited to deliver speech and to do workshop on how to do mobile learning. And here's a list of the countries I've presented in the last, I would say, the last 6 years. So many, many countries. And now I have to add Catalonia. Or Spain, and Spain. Oh. And yes, lots of universities are interested in mobile learning, e-learning. So I did presentations at some of those universities, plus a few others. University of Cambridge, University of London. Many open universities. I had a chance to visit many open universities and see how they operate, etc. And yes, there are many conferences on mobile learning around the world, and this year there were actually 8 different conferences on mobile learning. And here's a list of some of the conferences I presented on recently. Dubai Police Department. Why do I have Dubai Police Department here? The reason I have it there is because not only education is interested in mobile learning, private industry, government, etc. So I think, and that's where the money is, the private organization, businesses. To do research, you need to go to those organizations to give you equipment, connectivity, and money. So Dubai Police Department is actually interested in mobile learning to train your police person. So I did a presentation to the Dubai Police Department. So it's not only education, it's actually industry, businesses, government, etc. So I got a nice prize from the chief of police. Korea is one of the leaders in e-learning and mobile learning, South Korea. And they had a forum to set the trends and the future for mobile learning in South Korea. That was part of it.
They have cheap devices. The devices that are much cheaper than.
Because Samsung is Korean, that's donating. So Korea is talking about smart education, building a smart education system so that they can educate everyone at a very, very high level. So I was in South Korea about 4 weeks ago, talking to them about designing courses. And by 2015, South Korea is going to convert all of the K-12 curriculum digital. No more textbook, no more paper. So students will take a tablet with them to the class, to the school. No more book bags, no more books. Everything's going to be digital and to go with them. And I think other countries are going to follow South Korea. They're actually setting the trend. Maybe some of the countries in the Gulf region will go this way. And they're spending $2.4 billion to go digital, completely digital. So who knows, maybe in 5 years, there will be no more printed textbook. Everything will be digital, electronic. So the question is, are we ready for that? And yes, there was a session in the United States. They're getting into mobile learning. They wanted to set the agenda for mobile learning in the future. So they had a session in Washington, D.C., and I was part of that session to help set the global agenda for mobile learning. And there I was presenting at the Hilton in Washington, D.C. UNESCO, major initiatives on mobile learning. They had the first mobile learning week in December 2011, and I gave a presentation. And they have the second mobile learning week in February 2013, where they're bringing people from different parts of the world to talk about how they can use mobile for education and for education for all, to make sure everyone has a basic education. The World Bank has many, many projects around the world. And the people in the remote locations, they do not have computers, they have mobile devices. So they actually bypass the computer stage and they go directly to the mobile, to the smartphone stage. So we need to make sure that we present information for delivery on mobile devices. So lots of initiative with the World Bank on how to use ICT mobile to deliver services to people in remote locations. And I did a couple of presentations at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. on how to use mobile for training, education, and information dissemination. So when these big organizations are getting into mobile learning, I think we will see a major growth in the near future on mobile learning around the world. And we need to start designing courses for delivery of mobile computers. So education for all. UNESCO has the major initiative for education for all. And what that says is everyone in the world, all citizens should have at least a basic education level to function in society. And a basic education level is about grade 6. So everyone should have about a grade 6 level education. And the United Nations says education is a human right. Everyone should have access to education. But the problem is people do not have computers, but they have smartphones, they have mobile phones. So we need to design for delivery on the mobile phones. So the United Nations has the goal by 2015 all children have access to complete, free, compulsory primary education. So as educators and teachers, we have to make sure we have learning materials to deliver to these people. We had the digital divide. You've heard of the digital divide. Now everybody has mobile phones around the world. The digital divide is very small. Now we have the learning divide. They have the devices, but they don't have access to learning materials. So we have to make sure we bridge the learning divide. And yes, the indigenous people who live in remote locations, they tend to live in remote parts of the world. In Canada, we have many, many indigenous people that live in very, very remote areas, very remote cold areas where they can't travel. And actually, the way they travel in wintertime is the river freezes and they turn into road. So they just drive on the road. And when it's springtime, the ice melts and you can't drive on the road. So they have to take boat in the summertime. So there was a big summit in Tunis, Tunisia, where all indigenous people came together and says, how can we use technology, mobile, to reach people around the world, to make sure that people can communicate with each other and deliver education. And there we were in a Berber tent in Tunis. And we actually showed, at that summit, there were 50 prime ministers and presidents. And we showed them that you can connect from a Berber tent in Tunis to different parts of the world using technology. And they were amazed you can do that. I was surprised that they didn't know you can connect using technology. And they're the decision makers. So no wonder we don't progress too much in e-learning and mobile learning. So we're able to connect from this Berber tent to many, many countries around the world and talk to people in different parts of the world. So that's a little bit about what I do in terms of my projects and my travels around the world. So as you can see, lots of interest in mobile learning. And I think we have no choice but to move towards that direction. So let me talk about generations of distance education. I mentioned we started out at Athabasca 42 years ago, just after the Open University of the United Kingdom. So the first generation was print. And that's where you mail the print package to the student using a postal mail. And how long does it take to send a book in the postal mail? A long time, probably about a week or 2 weeks. So for students today, is it acceptable to them to send something and they get it 2 weeks later? No, they won't accept that anymore. So we started out with print, and then we went to the second generation where you had print and then you had some sort of a support. And the support actually came from telephone. So if the student has a question, he or she can phone the tutor, and the tutor will answer the question. And then with computers, we went to the third generation, where we have e-learning and online learning. So we have to design our courses for online delivery for electronic learning. And now we're moving to the fourth generation. And actually we are here, mobile and ubiquitous learning. So when you design your courses, you design it for regular computer, for tablets, and for mobile devices. So I say you design once to deliver on new technology, rather than have to redesign for mobile. So the fourth generation is mobile ubiquitous learning. And by ubiquitous, I mean that the technology will be everywhere. You won't take a device with you. So for example, when you go home, and your wall in your home says that you are in a good mood and you're smiling, you can actually present some learning materials to you. Or if in your kitchen, you can use the fridge as a computing device. You can actually access information from your fridge. You can learn from the fridge. So it's going mobile and ubiquitous. Fifth generation, I don't know what it's going to be like sometime in the future. Maybe it will be, the device will be embedded in us, be part of the brain or part of the body, and you can just access it yourself. You don't need a device. So here's some definitions of mobile learning. And the first one is the one that we came up with when we set standards for mobile learning. And it's a nice short one. Learning using information communication technologies in mobile context. So the student is mobile, and they use the technology to access learning materials. So that's a nice short definition. That's an ISO definition that we came to. And then I started in mobile learning many years ago, and that was my definition. Deliver on mobile computer allow access from anywhere, anytime. So which is convenient for students. And my colleague in Korea, South Korea, came up with a definition. It says, learning using mobile and wireless computer technologies in a way to promote learners' mobility and nomadicity nature. So the learner is mobile and take the device with him. So those are common definitions of mobile learning. But the first one is nice and general because if the technology changes, the definition is still valid. And if you go on the internet and you look for definition of mobile learning, you can see many, many definitions. So these are just examples of a few. So there are some reasons why we need to get into mobile learning. We remove barriers to learning, which is a major barrier. So people don't have access to learning materials, but they have the mobile device. Access remote location. I mentioned the indigenous people, they can use it to access learning materials from anywhere, anytime. Very important, the learners can learn in context. So rather than go to a physical school to learn, they can learn in their own environment and they can apply what they learn right away. And with the indigenous people, they can actually consult their elders in their local community to mentor them and to tutor them. So they actually learn in context, contextual learning. Cater for different learning styles. And based on research, we have different learning styles. So do you know what's your learning style? Yes. Analytical, global, yes. Creative, yes. So we all have different learning styles based on research. So what the technology will do, based on your interaction with the learning materials, it will actually detect your learning style and it will prescribe the appropriate learning materials. When you use some of the websites, for example, it will monitor what sites you visit, what information you visit, and it will actually customize information for you, similar to mobile learning. And of course, learning is more learner-centered, so the learner is at the center of the learning rather than the teacher, professor. And I mentioned major advantage. Many learners already have mobile devices or tablet computers that they can use. So why not design for delivering mobile devices? And then we have this new generation of learners that we have to cater to. Very, very comfortable with mobile devices, with technology. And I'm sure some of you have kids or nieces or nephews who are very comfortable with technology. They actually live with the technology. And then the information explosion. Information changes at a very fast rate. And they say information will double every 11 days by 2018. So what you learn today may not be valid next week. So you have to have access to current information. And then we are shifting from E, different sectors, to M. So electronic, when we talk about E, we talk about regular desktop, notebook computers. Now we go into mobile, tablets and smartphones and mobile phones. E-health, M-health, e-games, M-games, and we move into mobile. And then the new, I mentioned the new generation of students, very comfortable with technology. And this baby here, if the tea is too cold or the milk is cold, we send a message to the mom. And then the mom will come. So yes, imagine these young generation come to school and university, are we ready for them? Because they're very comfortable with technology. So these are some of the characteristics of the generations of learners. They have high online presence. They're the now generation. They want everything right away. So if a student today wants to find out some information, what do? Google. They need information right away. Even some adults, when you need information, you just Google right away, rather than go to a library and talk to a teacher. They can do things virtually. So they can have their friends next door or in the same room and they send SMS messages, etc. They are comfortable with the virtual environment. Good at social networking, they like to play games. So which means we have to make our learning materials interactive, game-like. Digital experts, and they adapt to technology very, very quickly. So you give the young person the technology and they will figure out to use it. Whereas the older people tend to go through the manual and try to figure out, etc. And so technology is second nature. There was a study that was reported in Oberta, how students prefer to learn. They asked students how they prefer to learn. And 55% says they like to learn in small group with their friends rather than go to classes. They like to do practical things. They like to learn with friends, using computers. 21% said alone, and only 19% said from teachers, which is a real eye-opener. And we send students to class. We have something called a learnable moment. So when do young people learn the best? When are they most alert? teenagers, when are they most alert? Probably in the evening. They're sharp in the evening, whereas early morning they're not very alert. But when do we start classes? For high school and junior high? 8 a.m. when they're still asleep. Yes. So with eLearn and mobile learning, they can learn anytime, anywhere. And based on learning style data, 67% of students learn best actively, yes, yet instruction is passive. So you just deliver information to the student. 69% are visual, instruction is mainly verbal and textual. And 28% are global, but we don't give them the big picture. So we have to consider students' learning style. So with eLearn and mobile learning, what you need to do is to have a repository of learning activities for the different learning styles. And the system will prescribe the appropriate activity based on your learning style. So we need to put some intelligence in the system. And this is an interesting study reported by some librarians. They asked students, where do you typically begin your search for information on a particular topic? So where do you look for information on a particular topic? And 84% said they use a search engine. 6% says they email other people to get information. And only 1% said they use a library website. So they're actually using the internet to find information rather than go to the teacher or to the library. And this is a study that was done by some librarians. And there was a study in Australia that says, gives the percent of students who are seriously considering dropping out. And 37% business students are thinking of dropping out. This is from traditional face-to-face. 37 IT students are thinking of dropping out. 35% nursing, 34% humanities. So a large number of students are thinking of dropping out from traditional face-to-face university because the new generation of students is not meeting their needs. And here are some of the reasons why students were thinking of dropping out. The teaching method doesn't meet their needs, their style. It's one way to deliver information. The course content probably was boring for them, wasn't interactive. They have life issues because they had to work, they have family issues, and they had paid work commitment, so they had to work, maybe they work part-time. So those are the top reasons why they were dropping out. But with eLearn and mobile learning, they come on from anything. And then I mentioned information explosion. Information changes at a very fast rate. There's a site on the internet that you can go and you can actually, on any date, you can find out information that's used or that were produced. Anybody use that website? It's called World. Yes, yes. And this was the stats from December 31st, 2011. So in 2011, based on that algorithm, there will be 1.1 million books published. On that day, 486 million newspapers circulated. Over 5 million cell phones sold. 170 million spent on video games on that one day. And who are playing the video games? The young people. 2.3 billion internet users in the world. 333 billion email messages sent on that one day. Over 3.8 million blog posts, 158 million tweets, and 3.4 billion Google searches. So lots of information out there, and lots of information being created with social media. And in terms of storage devices, we are talking about exabyte, and 1 exabyte is 1 billion gigabyte. So pretty soon we will have a storage device that will store all of the information we have in the world on one device, and a student can have access to all information on that one device. And then we have the emerging technologies, which is another reason to get into mobile learning. So young people today have many, many mobile phones. And it's going virtual, so you don't have to use a small keyboard on a mobile device anymore. You can actually project the screen or the keyboard, and you can actually use it. So you can turn it on and off. And they're doing prototypes of devices where you press a button and you will have a large screen also. So people won't complain about a small screen and a small keyboard. And actually I'm testing one of those virtual keyboards. Anybody use one of those or seen one of those? Maybe I'll just show it to you. I have it in my bag. You know, it's Bluetooth. So you press a button, and you can, it's your regular keyboard, and you can just, it's Bluetooth, so whatever I type here, I have a sync with my iPhone, goes on. So you don't have to use a small keyboard, and you can take it as large as you want. And we also have a smartphone that we just bought with a built-in projector. So you press a button and it will project it right to the screen. So the future devices will actually be, will have a button, you press it, you do your keyboarding, and then you press another button, you have your big screen. So you don't have to use a small screen. So it's going non-physical. So we won't complain about small keyboards and small screens. And you can put it on any surface. You put it somewhere. It's good for the plane. You can put the table down and you put it in your and you can make it as large as you want. So yes, the technology is just changing at a fast rate, and we should get ready for delivery on mobile or ubiquitous computing. So what I tell my professors, my colleagues is, you have to design for unknown technologies. We don't know what's going to come in 2 years or 5 years because it's changing at such a fast rate. So yes, the technology is changing. So there's an example of a virtual screen. So rather than look at a small screen, you can actually look at a big screen. So that's the virtual keyboard. And then they're looking at wearable devices. 1 minute it will be your bracelet, your fashion statement. You take it off, and then it will be your mobile device. So you can actually launch it. 1 minute of fashion statement, yes. Another trend is open education resources. Because education materials will be available in electronic format in repositories, so we have to allow students to access those materials using their mobile technology. And a good example is the Athabasca University Press, where we have open access book. Anybody went to our press and take a look at the books? Yes? Yes. So you can download any of the books and use it as open access in your courses, etc. And just to give you statistics for this one book that I edited on mobile learning. So you can download the entire book for free, or you can download individual chapters. Just go to AU Press. There are 58 different countries that downloaded the book, and the most download was from the United States, close to 9,000. And the reason is because many universities are using this book as a textbook. And students don't have to buy a textbook, they just download the book for free. Followed by Canada, India, United Kingdom, etc. Spain, 550 downloads. Many developing countries, because they can't afford to buy books, so they will download for free. So I suggest if you get a chance, make sure you publish a book as open access, because it gives you the exposure and people will use it. And if people use your book, you feel good. I mean, 60,000 people downloaded my book and are actually using it. Makes you feel good, you know, you're contributing to humanity. So publish at least one book as open access. So this statistics was a few months ago, 58,000 download over 3 years, now it's over 60,000. They download in 58 countries, but it doesn't affect the sale of the printed copies. So people have option to download for free, or they can buy the print copy. And 700 people decide to buy the copies. So it doesn't affect the sale of the printed copies. And it seems as if the free download is a good marketing tool for the print copies. We have something called the Open Content Alliance. They're trying to build digitized text in different languages, so people can access the text for free as open access. Major initiative around the world, Open Content Alliance. And you have heard of the Khan Academy, yes, where he has thousands of tutorials, and millions of students are actually using these tutorials on their tablets and on their mobile phones to learn about physics, chemistry, mathematics. And actually Bill Gates' children are actually using these tutorials to learn this. And actually I'll be meeting Salman Khan in Saudi Arabia in February. We are doing speeches together. And then Project Gutenberg, they're putting books for free where people can download the books so you can read it on your tablets and your smartphones. It's a major initiative. So the trend is for learning materials to be free, open access, open education resources. Good example is MIT, they put all the courses as open access. So the trend is learning materials will be free, but when students are ready for credit, for certification, they will contact the educational institution to write the exam to get credit. And that's where they will pay the money. Seems to be the trend. There was a study done by the Verizon Foundation in the USA, and they look at what's the ideal classroom in the 21st century. And these are the ones that came up with the use of digital media. I think everything will be digitized. Games, especially for the young students, which is not surprising. Mobile devices and learning, and online courses. So those are the characteristics of the 21st century classroom, based on the study by Verizon. And Quinn talked about the 4 C's of mobiles. And if you think about the 4 C's, the mobile device is a very powerful device. So you can deliver content in your mobile device. You can use the computing capability of the mobile phone, mobile device to do computation. You can capture information with your mobile, so you can take video, you can take pictures, you can capture audio, and you can use it for communication. So very powerful device, the mobile device, because of the 4 C's. And we need to make use of the 4 C's in education when we use mobile devices. So let me talk about some of the research projects that I'm involved with at my university. We do a lot of training on ESL, English as a second language, because we have many immigrants to Canada, not too many Canadians to fill the jobs, so we have immigrants coming in to do the jobs. English is their second language. So we develop some English lessons where they can actually learn English on their mobile devices. And these lessons are open access, so anyone can use the English lessons. And if you're interested, I can give you the URL. It's server-based, so you go to the web and you can complete the lessons. We have a lot of professionals are retiring, and they're over 55. And they are very comfortable using mobile devices, smartphones and tablets. So we did a study on how we should design learning materials and newspapers, etc., for them to read on their mobile devices. So we just completed a study on how to design for older adults so that they can use their mobile devices. We are also doing a study with our students on how to determine how they use mobile technology when they learn, when they take distance education courses. And it's a major funding from the government of Canada that we got to see how the online students are using mobile devices. So we can transfer what we want from there to other universities. Lots of projects on how to make our library mobile friendly. So we have the library catalog, we have the electronic materials the student can read on their mobile devices now. And the reason is because we made the library mobile friendly. So a student anywhere in the world can use their mobile phone and they can access the library, they can access reading materials, etc. Just completed a study on the state of mobile learning in Canada, how organizations are using mobile learning and what's the future direction for mobile learning. And we came up with some recommendations. I'll present some recommendations in a few minutes. I'm working on a project, Mobile Learning in the Workplace, funded by the government of Qatar Foundation. And we are looking to see how the workers in Qatar can use mobile phones to learn so that when they're in the job they can get just-in-time training. So it's a major project with Qatar to introduce mobile learning in the workplace in Qatar. So just some feedback or some results from some of the studies we did for the course delivery using mobile devices. In computer science, we had 3 courses where students choose to do it on their regular computer on mobile devices. And actually this was the first course we converted. This was our first study in terms of mobile learning. So they had the choice of doing it on a computer or they can do it on a mobile device. And here's a list of the devices that students use. And as you can see, some of them are very old mobile technology because this was done about 7, 8 years ago. So they use a variety of technology to access the course. And the reason they can do that is we built an intelligent agent to detect the device the student is using, and it formats the material for that device. So rather than get everyone to use the same mobile, you actually adapt the learning materials for the different mobiles. And these are some of the things that students says they can use the mobile learning for. They can access online assignments, log into courses, study materials, peer-to-peer interaction. We need to improve more of that, get them to work together. They do course forums, they access quizzes, etc. So they use it for a variety of activities at a distance. I mentioned we did some project in language training. So for the different sectors in the workforce, so we had health and wellness, utilities, oil and gas, retail sales. We did ESL training for the different area. So if a student is working in retail and sales, he or she will click on the link and it will give them training in retail and sales in terms of English as a second language. So it's customized for the different disciplines. And actually this is a screenshot from one of the mobile devices that we use. And some of the lessons have video, so they look at the video and then they can answer a question based on what they see in the video. And on the right-hand side, it says, answer the following question. What is the first question the medic asks? How are you, what happened, etc. And they will select the best answer. We also have tests that they complete on their mobile device, multi-choice, true, false. Another type of test, we jumble a sentence and they have to assemble it in the right order, completion, etc. And after they complete the test, they get feedback right away. They get your mark right away, they get feedback. So if anyone is interested in looking at these lessons, I can give you the link to go to. And you can try it in your mobile phone. So in terms of feedback from students, it says provide flexibility to learn anywhere, anytime. So over 80% says it gives them flexibility. They like to learn anywhere, anytime. And this is typical of any mobile study that we did. We like the flexibility. Could make learning more easily available, and over 70% says yes, it could make it even more easily available for them to access. And I would like to take other lessons using mobile technology, and about 70% says they would like to take other lessons using mobiles. So we get similar results with other studies. They like it and they want to do more times of mobiles. I mentioned I did a study, a state of mobile learning in Canada and future directions. And if anybody wants to duplicate this study in Catalonia or Spain, state of mobile learning in Catalonia and future directions, I'm willing to share with you the instrument we use, the process, etc. You may just have to translate it in Catalonia. So soon you will have some results to publish in the paper. So what we did is, based on the study, we came up with some recommendations. And these are the recommendations we made for Canada. We need to have a national agency that looks at mobile learning, so that we can share information and could provide funding, etc. We have a national agency that look at social sciences and engineering, but we need someone to look at mobile learning. Okay, very important. We need to develop more standards for mobile learning, because everyone is doing their own thing and they don't share. It would be nice to share with each other. We need more research grant, the Tri-Council Research Grant Program. Right now we have 3 granting agencies, one for health, one for engineering, one for social sciences. We need to be under one of those granting agencies in terms of research. And very important, we need to train our teachers on mobile learning and our professors how to use mobile in education. When I go to countries and I present on mobile learning, one of the questions I ask is, should I allow my student to take the mobile phones in the classroom? And I said yes, and I was surprised. I said yes. But they said, oh, they will use the mobile phone to access inappropriate site and they will call each other. It says because the teacher is not trained on how to use mobile effectively in the classroom. We have to train teachers on how students can use mobiles in the classroom for learning. And if you have activities for them to use the mobile, we will actually use it for learning. So the teacher training program should talk about emerging technologies and mobile technologies and learning. Very important. And we made some recommendations for organization. And the different plans that they have, they should include mobile learning. It's a major initiative, especially for the future. We need to create partnership between industries and education. And I mentioned the reasons because industry has the money. They have the equipment, they have the software, and they will donate it to the education institution. And we have a number of research chair at Athabasca that's funded by private industry. So they provide the funding. So we need more linkages with private industry. Have you heard of Research in Motion, which is the BlackBerry? You heard of BlackBerry? The BlackBerry mobile phone? It's a Canadian company. Not doing very well these days because of Apple and Samsung. So we need more partnership with those type of organizations so that they can provide equipment. And organizations need to have a research agenda for mobile learning. So your university, under your research plan, there should be something in there about mobile learning, emerging technologies, very important. And what that will do, it will encourage people to do research in mobile learning. It will be a kind of a catalyst. And we need to publish our studies on mobile learning so we can all learn from each other. And publish it as open access, so you don't have to pay for it. Very, very important. We have a very important journal at Athabasca called Erodo. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Yeah. So you should publish in places such as, and you have some at your university also. Yes. Open access. So these are some trends that I see with regards to mobile learning, emerging technologies. I mentioned virtual devices. It's going virtual. It's non-physical, so you can make it as large as you want, etc. Immediate assembly of learning materials. Very, very interesting. The trend is to store learning materials in repositories, electronic repository. And a professor, if he or she has to design a course, they will just access the learning materials from the repository and assemble the course right away, rather than take 6 months to assemble the course, because the information will be electronic. This also applies to students. If students want to find information, what do they do right now? They type in a phrase in Google, right, and it brings it up. In the near future, students will type in the learning outcome, the learning objectives. And the system will assemble all the learning materials for them to learn without the teacher intervention. And they will go and they'll learn the materials, and then when they're ready for the exam, they will contact the institution to do the exam. So the students will be able to assemble their own learning materials because they will exist in a repository as open education resources. We need intelligent agents to adapt the interface for the learner, because the different learners have different learning styles. Some are very visual, some are textual, etc. We need to build intelligence in the learning material. So the learning materials will detect the student problem and will branch the student to the appropriate section. And then a few years ago, we also talked about ITS, Intelligent Tutoring System, similar to intelligent learning materials. Open education resources, a major trend, where learning materials will be free, courses will be free, and students will just pay to take the exam. And Athabasca got a research chair, a UNESCO research chair in open education resources. So we have major initiative in terms of OERs. And less use of textual materials, more multimedia. So you make use of the multimedia capability of the computer to present information in the mobile device. And I mentioned young people today, they don't like to read. They like to view, they like to listen. They don't like to read long textbooks. They like short clips and short pieces of information. And these are some areas I think we need to look at in terms of research in mobile learning. How do you build interfaces for mobile learning, especially for the emerging technologies, especially for the virtual technology, the virtual screen, etc. How do you build interfaces for them? We need to look at the learning style of the different cultures and design for the different cultures. And what are the characteristics of mobile technology for different cultures? So if you think about it, where were the mobile phones invented and designed? Europe, Asia, America, yes. How about countries such as the Middle East, for example? Are these devices appropriate for those countries? So we need to look and see, make sure we design for different cultures. We need to make learning more interactive so you can promote high-level learning. And based on psychology, there are different levels of interaction. And the lowest level is where a student will use the mouse to move around the lesson. And the highest level, where they will actually do simulation, or you will take them into a virtual environment. And an example is in the medical area. The medical students can actually have a virtual walkthrough of the human body. They can actually go in the human body, and they can touch the heart, etc. So feel it as if it's real. Very, very high level learning. So you have to make it interactive. How to design and deliver multimedia materials because of the new generation. They like the multimedia. And the technology of the future will have voice input and voice output. So how do you design for those technologies? Deliver learn to meet the needs of the nomadic learner who is always on the move. So yes, people are on the move. How do you design? And one example, if someone starts a lesson on their mobile device and they have to stop, they should continue where they left off the next time, rather than redo their lesson again. Or you should give them a summary, so that they have a summary of what they did. So very important, how do you deliver vocational training using mobile technology? How do you go with a blended environment? Allow them to do some simulation and then actually go and do the practical hands-on at a lab. And how to design content for different age groups. We talk a lot about lifelong learning. So when you design some materials, you should design for the different age group. Because someone may take a lesson when they are 60 years old because of lifelong learning. And the characteristics of the next generation of mobile technology. So based on my research and my speeches and talking with people, these are some areas we need research in terms of mobile learning. And I did a study where I interviewed people to find out what are the 21st century skills students need to function. And here's a list of the major areas: communication, personal skills, problem solving, ICT, globalization, research, and critical thinking. And if you look at those, e-learning, mobile learning provide those students with those skills. And if you notice what's missing, their content. The content is out there, they can learn it anytime, but they need these 21st century skills to function in the 21st century. Good communication, good problem solving, etc. So education needs to provide the students with these 21st century skills so that they can function in the job environment or in society. And students with e-learning can actually achieve some of this, especially research, critical thinking, globalization, etc. And yes, when you go to do mobile learning project, I suggest these steps. You establish a sense of urgency. And yes, there is a sense of urgency because of information explosion, new generation of learners, new technology, etc. It's going to be out there, so we might as well start designing for mobile delivery. So we need to place a sense of urgency. Create a vision. University department should have a vision, a plan. You communicate that to your faculty, your staff. And very important, you develop the infrastructure for the mobile delivery. So for example, our website at Athabasca, students can use their mobile to access the website. We call it MyAU. So the website should be mobile friendly. And you create some wings. You start with a small mobile project, make sure it's successful, and then you can communicate that to your colleagues so that you can buy them over to do mobile learning. And then you implement your changes. So these are the steps that I took when I implemented mobile learning. So in business, people are doing banking in their pocket. We have in-the-pocket banking. So do you still go see a teller? You go see a teller at the bank. You know the person behind the bank? No. People don't see a teller now. They do use their phone or computer to do their banking. So we talk about the in-the-pocket banking. Now, libraries are mobile friendly. A library in your pocket, so if you want to actually take out your mobile, yes. A doctor in everyone's pocket. So yes, people, if they have a medical problem, they use their mobile, they go find out what's the problem, and they can take the necessary action. So I'll be ready for learning in the pocket. I think we need to be prepared for learning in the pocket. Here are some interesting predictions that were completely wrong. There was a prediction that there will be a need for only 5 computers in the world. And who made that prediction? President of IBM. Many years ago. He says, we only need 5 computers in the world. How many computers do we have in the world? Billions. And there was another one, why would anyone want a computer in the home? How many computers do you have in your home? 5, 4, 3, 2, yes. And there is one, 640 random access is all people will need. How much RAM do you have? So who said that? Bill Gates. Yes, Bill Gates says 640 is all you need. And then someone says the internet will collapse. Can't do without the internet. So people are making the same prediction about mobile learning, but I think they will be wrong. Yes. So there is no turning back. When you design your courses, you should design for regular computer, tablet, mobile devices, etc. And I was very lucky to give a speech at UNISA, University of South Africa, which is the Africa Open University. And I was coming out from the building, and I saw this poster with a quote from Nelson Mandela. Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And so we need to have education for all, so that people can be educated and we can be tolerant of each other and we can change the world. Very, very powerful quote. And this kind of drives my research in terms of mobile learning, open education resources, etc. And I'll open it for questions and discussion or any of your comments.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I understand that this might mean education for all. Sometimes I think that sometimes it's much more content for all than education for all, because for me the model behind is important. Have you participated in the researches that you have presented us? Have you participated in any project in which it's not in which you not only did research on how many or which devices the people is using, but how they are using it and them, and if they are learning or not? So not that much in how much are they are consuming, but how they are learning.
Yes. I've done a couple of studies that look at their performance in mobile learning compared to online learning, which is regular computer, and there is no difference in terms of their performance. And the study that I'm doing right now, where we look at our students, so we have two groups of students, one that take courses that use mobile and one that use a regular computer, and we will look at their performance at the end of the course. Yeah, I did look at some, but there is no significant difference between the two.
I tend to also, when I see professors hear about mobile learning, a lot of, even in the concept of mobile learning, it's more about mobile content delivery, and within the concepts there is the focus of that, while learning seems to be more of an experience. So are there any already existing guidance for designing for mobile learning? Because when we design for online learning, at least we have some clues about how to design this experience. And I'm thinking about the success of Apple, it's about designing experiences and not devices or content, the whole experiences. Do you think we are ready for that, or is there any guidance in terms of designing also for mobile learning, and not exclusively for online learning? Because I think about when you're working on a mobile device, you're thinking also in people moving. So you may think in terms of maybe what you have to design for mobile learning are short experiences of 5 minutes maybe. So this begins to be clues about how to design learning experiences. Also in a multimodal way, because you would think about the computer and also mobile. So are there any principles that are emerging and that we need for in fact research on that? Do you think it's important to have this kind of research?
It is important, and it depends on how creative you are with your mobile device. For example, with a regular computer, it's difficult to do contextual learning. With a mobile device, for example, a student can have the mobile device, take a picture of a tree, and it will bring up information on what that tree is all about. Contextual learning. Take equipment of an animal. So it's good for contextual learning outside the classroom, etc. Yes. So we need some good design strategies for mobile learning, yes. But it depends how creative you are. And we need to make use of the 4 C's, as Quinn suggested. Capture information and share it with your colleagues, etc. Yes.
The idea of augmented reality is the one I see very interesting for mobile learning, because there are some experiences with archaeology students going to sites and capturing information. It's able to identify more information, or even as a tourist can capture the Eiffel Tower and it's able to recognize the image and give more information for that and interact. So I see there are experiences that are particularly exclusive to mobile, and this is very important also. Maybe give some guidance for that and ideas. You think in terms not only in the delivery of content, because this is more a matter of
the learning strategy.
Yeah, in terms of learning strategies, because in terms of it's more a technical solution you can find how to compare, for example, the journal. You can read on the I have experience with the journal. You read it on the newspaper, sorry, you read it online, and you read it on a mobile device, and it organizes the same content in a different way. So it's more a, I don't know what to call it, technical interface issue, while mobile learning could also go through to these kind of problems and to research on these areas. So we, as teacher, we can find that more interesting, and not only in a way you can automatically adapt content to different devices. And it's also very important. That's why you're working in terms of standards, and we have to be aware as designers and teachers about that. But not only about that. I think the move of mobile learning can get a lot of adherence and visibility if we go to that also. That kind of, I would be interested in researching that part of in experience, if we could call experience, specific to mobile learning and what it means.
Yeah, and that's why number 4, how do you make the learning interactive so that you can have high level learning? Yeah. And we're talking about emotional computing now, where you hold a mobile device and it detects your emotion based on your pulse and your temperature. And it will prescribe the appropriate learning experience. So customize it based on your emotion. So yes, we need more research on how you design good mobile learning using the power of technology. So yes, you need to do more research on mobile learning.
Very much more.
Any comments on anybody doing any projects on mobile learning? Yes.
Yes. Actually, we have, for example, a project using augmented reality, the laboratory of tourist studies. Okay, and then using the mobile phones, the students can build a layer of information using browsers of augmented reality, for example. And also we have the virtual learning environment adapted for the mobile browsers. And we have, but this is not research, this is infrastructure topics, okay? And we have in beta version 2, and actually for native apps, for these are apps to connect students to the virtual learning environment, okay, in an automated way for tablets and smartphones, both Android and iOS. And more or less, this is our working in this area.
So there's no research?
No, research, so it's pedagogical and in terms of infrastructure, but not research, actually. We are made some years ago, 2 years ago, a qualitative study about the uses of mobile learning in commuting context. It was a little research. I haven't passed the paper, for example, but that's the experience.
Any other comments or questions?
How do you see teacher training in general all over the world for mobile learning? Are they too back in trying to get used to computers?
I think the problem with teacher training is the professors who teach teachers. What do professors use when they teach teachers? Whiteboard and overhead transparency. They need to model emerging technologies when they teach so that the teachers can do it. Because teachers tend to teach the way they were taught. So we need the professors in university to use more emerging social media, etc. in their teaching use. And yes, it's an issue around the world, teacher training, and that's one of the UNESCO major initiatives. How to use mobile learning to train teachers in the different countries so that they can teach students. So make them more mobile literate so that they can teach students. Yeah.
Directly to teachers, not teacher trainers.
Directly to teachers, not to teacher trainers. So it's more professional development of teachers who are already teaching. Projects in Ghana and Zambia that I've been working on.
Because Africa, they have more phones than computers. And,
Yeah, they're
and mobile
bypassing the
phones
computer.
more than residential phones.
That's right. And in some countries, the choice of gifts for spouse is a mobile phone. Rather than buying your spouse a car, you buy the spouse a mobile phone that costs $25,000. So an iPhone can cost $25,000. And you know why? Because there are diamonds around the phone.
Oh.
Yes, so they give the phone as a gift for diamonds. It's a choice of gift for spouse. And in some countries, people prefer to starve so that they can get them. That's how important it is. So we need to send materials for them to access it. Any more comments, questions?
I have a question about this experience. You've been participating in the publication of books. Are there any good examples, best practices in terms of mobile learning there? Documented so we can get inspired inspiration how to use it. I mean, sort of a good experience. I remember the Espiral presentation. There's a teacher at the secondary level that was using with his students mobile devices, and he sent them away for a short visit, and they were geological taking pictures and pushed into Google Maps. I can't remember very well. They were doing all that on to say that at the same time and communicating that they were visiting different places. It was amazing also about geolocalization, capturing images and documenting experiences about visiting of part of the city. This kind of, I found it very, very interesting. Difficult to design and but this is mobile is the only way to do that, those kind of things. This is specific to mobile.
Yeah, there are best practices for classroom-based mobile, but
Classroom-based?
not too many for online distance.
Okay.
Yeah, we need more.
So we can do that. Okay.
There was literature. It was about a book that took place in Barcelona. So
Yeah.
the teacher, the literature teacher,
It was a literature, yes, I
used
remember.
the same phases to recreate the story in
Yes.
the book, in the novel story.
It's a very engaging activity. It's not just, literature is so boring, the same students are so boring. So you can go and then provide.
So it's a young area for research. Maybe you will see can take a leadership in Spain, Catalonia.
That's a lot of things.
Lots of things.
Very interesting. Of course.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.